Welcome to 10-5, the official podcast of the OPP Association. My name is Scott Mills.
And I'm Emily Brown, and we are the Strategic Communications Coordinators for the OPP Association, and your host for the 10-5 podcast, the official podcast of the OPP Association. Little background for our new listeners: the OPPA is the sole bargaining agent for the close to 10,000 members of the Ontario Provincial Police. Our members are our focus and our strength, and we aim to promote and provide important information to our members and the public about matters that affect policing in the province of Ontario.
Thanks, Emily. And we today have a great guest. I think you're really going to enjoy this. We have the program coordinator for Crime Stoppers Guelph-Wellington with us today. And she's going to talk about a new Crime Stoppers program designed and being implemented in Northern Ontario called Indigenous Focus Crime Stoppers. So we're happy to welcome Sarah Bowers-Peter to the 10-5 podcast. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Scott and Emily. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, Sarah, I know you were recently recognized for a prestigious OPP Accolades Award for your work in this new Crime Stoppers program. So first off, congratulations to you. And second, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, the award was quite a surprise. I am extremely honored to be one of the individuals recognized. They had the event July 11th this summer, and it's an opportunity for uniform and civilian members to be recognized at the highest level for the work being done, and certainly being in a room with these amazing, accomplished individuals was quite humbling. During that time, the type of award I received was part of the team partnership in the community focus category. So I was able to share the stage with the commissioner as well as the members of the Northwest Regional Advisory Council. That's an Indigenous representation organization. And there were 3 members from that body there as well. We collectively received the team trophy, and then afterwards we're presented with our own individual accolade awards. So it's a very shiny, mirrored trophy with a black panel in the center, indicating that it's the Accolade Award of Excellence for 2023, signed by the commissioner. And then in addition, we received the tip staff pin for the OPP as well, which is something I'm quite proud of and quite excited to wear in the future.
Now, many of our listeners won't know this, but Sarah is actually a valued member of the OPP Association in her civilian capacity. So, Sarah, can you give us a little bit about your background?
I'm happy to do that. My entry point into OPP was in August of 2011. That was the position of civilian data entry, and that's back when each of the test locations, the satellite locations existed, and I was in Wellington County. A great opportunity to engage with uniformed members, get a feel for the organization, and then eventually, in July of 2014, the position of program coordinator for Crime Stoppers Guelph-Wellington came available. It was transitioned to a civilian role, and I was quite eager to take that position because it seemed to be a good match with my skill set. Once I became comfortable in the role of program coordinator, I let my name stand in 2016 for a position on the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers Board of Directors. So that's the provincial body. I'm still handling the work at the local level, but feeling that I had something to contribute at the provincial level. And that's a role that I had through until February of this year. And during that time, I had a couple of different responsibilities, primarily the Technology and Communications Committee Chair, which was very exciting and interesting and something that I really enjoyed and allowed me to connect with a lot of local programs throughout the province, as well as being the conference and education committee member that helped support the chair in making sure that our programs had the education, whether it's the board members or the program coordinators, to ensure continuity of the program. That was really important to me. Through that affiliation, I was able to connect with the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, who started the No Human Trafficking, that's KNOW, No Human Trafficking online training module, which was amazing, that the response that they've had to that. And they asked if there's any way that Crime Stoppers could be a part of it. So my thinking was we could represent as being the reporting portion of the organization, that they would handle the training around human trafficking, and Crime Stoppers would be the anonymous and confidential method of reporting crimes. So the logo for the Ontario Association was included, or the Canada Association, depending on where the representation was. We were partnered in a trailer wrap campaign. So when you see these long transport trailers that are going down our highways, there's more than 25 of these that have the OACS or CCSA logos on them to remind people that if they see, once they've taken the training and they understand what human trafficking is and they see it happening, that they can report it anonymously and confidentially to Crime Stoppers. So very proud of that campaign, because it truly is groundbreaking. And the most recent development there was having videos around this messaging being broadcast in each of the en route locations throughout Ontario. So significant awareness around human trafficking, and of course with Crime Stoppers as a partner in that. So really proud of that. Additionally, I did serve a time between 2017 and 2023 on the Canadian Crime Stoppers Association as the communications advisor. But really, it's my primary focus has been, to support my local program and any other programs across the province that maybe need help or are looking for guidance. And the beauty about Crime Stoppers is that we're a very sharing organization. If we're doing something in Guelph-Wellington that really works, and someone in another organization, another part of the province wants to use it, we're very good about sharing resources that way, making sure we're all successful.
That's great. It's amazing how many Crime Stoppers programs there are throughout North America and the world, for that matter. It's mind-boggling, and I know that you've been highly recognized for your work there in Guelph-Wellington. So I know Guelph-Wellington's really, really fortunate to have you there, Sarah. And I personally have had the pleasure in my career to collaborate with you in your various roles. And for our listeners, I must say that Sarah goes above and beyond in whatever she does. And I didn't even know that she was responsible for those en route videos, because I saw them and I thought to myself, who's doing those? And of course it's Sarah. So she's very dedicated to the community led Crime Stoppers programs. And I have to kind of just really stress the fact these are community led programs in partnership with the police and the media. And they are very, very effective, and they're provincially, nationally, and internationally. And we're going to get into it a little bit later, exactly how it all works. But I know Sarah, Emily mentioned the Accolades Award recognition. But I know that at the Ontario level, at the Canadian level, at the international level, Sarah's also been recognized in the Crime Stoppers community for all these programs. So people in Ontario have greatly benefited from the work here. So thanks, Sarah, for all you do.
Well, thank you. You can't see me right now, but I'm blushing profusely.
Well, somebody's got to say it. So I've seen what you're doing from afar for a long, long time, and
thank you.
So,
and now, kind of further to this conversation, I'm somewhat new to the world of law enforcement, and there might be some listeners that are not overly familiar with the program. So, can you explain exactly what Crime Stoppers programs are?
Absolutely. That's literally my job. So not a problem there. Crime Stoppers, simply put, is an anonymous and confidential method of reporting crime. And as Scott mentioned, these are community-led organizations every community in Ontario has one. If you don't know where yours is, then just go to the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers website and you'll be able to find it. There's 37 programs across the province. Each of these local programs is a registered charitable organization, and they each have autonomy, so they don't have to all conform to the same messaging at the same time. We all have the same goal of community safety and making sure that we have community members that are supporting that and having strong relationships with our media as well as our police partners. So there's that commonality. But as far as, what awareness campaigns we initiate or pursue, or what fundraising we do, we have some flexibility there. But as far as the Foundation of Crime Stoppers, being able to say that we have anonymity and confidentiality is key. And that goes back, of course, to the case law set by the Supreme Court in 1997 with R versus Liepert. We're able to use that as our backstop. So anytime that there's a question in court, we have legal counsel that will speak to that and reference that decision. The Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers, as mentioned, is the provincial body. The national body is the Canadian Crime Stoppers Association. We also, as again Scott mentioned, Crime Stoppers International being the larger oversight body. And then, of course, we have Crime Stoppers Global Solutions. And they all basically have the same focus and objective of community safety, just at varying levels. And we all have the option of the anonymous tips. Again, there's a little difference in how we do that. Some programs do the web tip option. Some programs do the app. Most programs have the toll-free number of 1-800-222-TIPS. And that's certainly something that most of us use in our marketing of our programs.
And basically, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but it all does come down to the local level. Like there's all the groups that you're talking about, they don't have any binding authority over anybody else. Like it's basically a local group of people to get together and do good work in their community. Is that
yeah, absolutely. That's the backbone of Crime Stoppers is the community investment, and that's the volunteers that donate their time and talent and expertise to the Crime Stoppers movement. On my local board, we have everything from retired individuals to people just starting out in their careers. We have entrepreneurs. We have a retired detective sergeant, which I must admit is certainly an asset for some of the conversations that are had around community safety. But having that varied skill set and people from a variety of communities is really important, and being able to represent all areas geographically and otherwise of our community is really important to the success of an organization.
Well, it's interesting. I could talk for hours and hours and hours exactly how this all works, because I've got my little pet peeves on it, and I'm sure you do too. But it does do a lot of good, and a lot of tips come in, and we're going to get into exactly kind of how the tips come in and how it anonymizes and stuff like that a little later. But what we really wanted to talk to you about in this podcast is this new program, Indigenous Focus Crime Stoppers, what it's all about, how it got started, how it works, what the future looks like for it, and stuff like that. So I'm just going to turn it over to you if you want to tell us that story, Sarah.
Sure. That's great. I appreciate the opportunity to share. So it was about a year ago in June of 2023 when I received an email from Chief Superintendent Brian McKillop of Northwest Region. His office indicated that they wanted to have a conversation around the relationship between Crime Stoppers and Indigenous communities. And it was shared with me that there were a couple of instances where members of the community had reached out to Crime Stoppers and either didn't have a great experience or were reluctant to come forward in the first place with information, even anonymously and confidentially. So there seemed to be like a disconnect between the Crime Stoppers organization and Indigenous communities. So after some conversation, it was about July of last year, we had a subsequent conversation around what we could do to address this vacancy, this void between the communities and Crime Stoppers. Because as I just mentioned, the best Crime Stoppers organizations are the ones that represent all members of their community. So the opportunity presented itself to develop something new, and I looked at what we had with Crime Stoppers, which is fairly simple and fairly straightforward, and thought, how can we do this better and create a comfort level for Indigenous communities? So the plan really came about with some simple points about what we needed to do to fix it. So for starters, we needed to have training on Indigenous culture for the Crime Stoppers call center so that the call takers were aware when they were speaking to someone regarding a tip that could be located in an Indigenous community, what the proper engagement should be when a tipster is Indigenous and how they're communicating, how best to respond to that, as well as geographical awareness. I think being in southwestern Ontario, it's easy for us to think, well, we all know where everything is. But I think it's fair to say when you get north of Orillia or Sudbury, for most people, you kind of lose track of the communities. And that's not a good response when you have someone calling from Big Trout Lake or Wapakika, and these places are wanting to know that they're talking to someone who knows what's going on. So that was a very important part of the program. And then looking to include Indigenous training at the Crime Stoppers level at their annual conference for program coordinators such as myself, as well as board members. And that was for a couple of reasons. First of all, again, Indigenous communities are not relegated to Northern Ontario. We have Indigenous communities throughout Ontario. So we need to be engaged and respectful of these communities. And whether it's, someone from the community providing a tip or maybe reaching out and looking for volunteer or fundraising or crime awareness, crime prevention support through Crime Stoppers, we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all community members, including Indigenous communities. Next was addressing the language barrier. Most Crime Stoppers materials are in English. There are some programs, I know Toronto is one of them, that is looking at or has already developed multilingual promotional materials, but certainly not in Indigenous languages. And that's something that we felt needed to be addressed. So whatever materials were going into community needed to be in all of the languages of that community, and certainly having English as a backup piece for those who were primarily English speaking. Now, all of this is great and certainly addresses the immediate problems, but we knew we had to visit Indigenous communities to understand what they were facing and to better respond to those needs. So that was an important part of the initiative as well, is to actually have firsthand knowledge of what we should be doing and how we could address concerns at the local level. And none of these things could happen without permission from Band Council. So once the concept was developed, it was presented to the Regional Indigenous Advisory Council for their review and their approval. And once they gave it, they indicated that we would have to go to each community's band council to get local permission, which is the appropriate way to progress with this. So once we had that permission in place, we also knew that we wanted to address training investigators. That's a problem that we have with all Crime Stoppers. I shouldn't say problem, more of a challenge for all Crime Stoppers organizations, is making sure our investigators are well versed in how to handle a Crime Stoppers tip and ensuring that they're handling it correctly, just to further protect protect the identity of the tipster, as well as the sanctity of the program. We don't want an investigator doing something that could jeopardize the Crime Stoppers programs. So making sure we're training both OPP and Indigenous services, police services, with how to handle Crime Stoppers tips and dispositions was also baked into this concept. And then the offer of additional supports to Indigenous communities and the local Crime Stoppers programs in those areas, such as, how can we support through social media? Is there a traditional media option that we should be doing to help increase awareness? If there's any other additional community engagement ideas or supports that we could be developing to reach communities at a local level. The primary focus of this initiative was to always maintain the dignity and the respect of band council and the individual community members. This needed to be something that was led by the community, not the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers or the local Crime Stoppers program. Again, successful organizations are those that are responsive to their communities, listen to their communities, and engage with their communities. So once we had this full program sort of tied up, like I say, the Northwest Regional Advisory Council approved the concept in September of last year. And then we spent last fall working with the Northwest Region Crime Stoppers programs to educate them on what we wanted to do, making sure the programs were operating correctly and were in a good place, because we were anticipating hopefully an avalanche of calls, but to make sure that they were actually aware that this initiative was taking place and how best to engage with local communities. I was able then to take the week-long training in Thunder Bay with the Indigenous Policing Bureau, which was very important because it was decided that I would be the person going into community and presenting this revamped concept and wanting to be respectful and appropriate when engaging with band council and community members. So finally, in April of 2024, I was able to go up to Big Trout Lake for the inaugural presentation to band council. I cannot overstate how successful that was. Certainly had a lot of anticipation going into it, a little anxious, making sure that we had, had the correct tone, had the correct messaging, but certainly rewarded at the end of the presentation when we were advised that not only were they in favor of the initiative, that they wanted posters created for the entire Big Trout Lake community for each household about Crime Stoppers and the contact information to report crimes. So it's certainly a successful start to this initiative. The ultimate goal, however, is to roll out this concept across the province, because as I mentioned, we have Indigenous communities throughout Ontario. It's not relegated to one area of the province. And I think all Crime Stoppers programs across Ontario would do well to engage more with their communities as a whole, but specifically Indigenous communities.
That's great work. What a great synopsis. I kind of was unclear of the program, and that was a really good explanation of it. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. That, I'm the one talking right now, but certainly, as I mentioned, without the Regional Advisory Council and more specifically from the OPP side, Inspector Ben Curtis was my partner in crime, so to speak, with this, making sure that, we were being reflective of the communities and engaging the way that Northwest Region was hoping. And it was a pleasure working with him too. So it certainly was, as the award indicates, a team partnership for sure.
I echo Emily's comments. It's impressive work. That was a great synopsis of what you're doing, Sarah. Can you explain for anybody listening how the calls, web, I don't know if they're still doing text or whatever, how these tips are received, how they're processed, how it anonymizes, like where's the call center, who's answering the phones, all that type of stuff. Even the reward system, if you can touch on that. I know that, for instance, in Toronto, rewards are not even being given anymore. That like the value of Crime Stoppers is the anonymity protection of the Supreme Court of Canada to get over the fear of coming forward. So. If you could just touch on some of those things for us, that would be great, Sarah.
Absolutely. So basically, the idea is that we want to provide an anonymous and confidential method of reporting crime. So the primary way, the first way that tip taking was initiated was through the toll-free number, as I mentioned, which is 1-800-222-TIPS, which is 8477. You always speak to a live person. It's not an automated system, which for a lot of people is quite the advantage. The programs also offer web tips, so that's a digital communication, and most programs throughout Ontario have a web tip portal on each of their websites. So for our program, you go to csgw.tips, you click Report a Crime here, and it takes you into a portal. So this is not an email communication. This is a one-way portal where someone can provide information into the website. So there's no tracking. There's not an email that we use. It's simply information that you're putting into our website. There's a system that we use that's dedicated for all Crime Stoppers programs called P3, and that software ensures that there's no way for us to go back and locate someone who is a tipster. The way that you are connected to your information when you go onto a web tip, it's the same when you call us, is you're given a code. So it's a numeric code, and you hang on to that code. And if you need to follow up with additional information, if you want to see if your information resulted in an arrest, you just quote that code, whether it's on the website or to the local program when you call in. So it's not an email, it's not your telephone number, not an address, any of that. So we really work hard to keep tipsters anonymous and confidential. Once we get that information at Crime Stoppers, we sanitize the tip. So specifically, if someone were to say, I live across the road, my neighbor at 123 Main Street, is selling stolen car parts, we would take out any reference to the fact that the tipster lives across the road from the address in question, which is 123 Main Street, and we would just simply forward it to the investigating agency. Tipster reports criminal activity at 123 Main Street, selling of car parts, that type of thing. We don't want to have any information that could identify the tipster. We want to make sure that information provided is obviously helpful. We don't take in any content that would be relevant to an investigation, but anything that is tied to the identity of the individual reporting the information, we remove that. That's to, again, protect the program. Once the investigator gets this information, it's their job to determine the validity of it. You know, a lot of people say, well, I gave a tip on Friday and it's Monday and you haven't arrested the guy. And it's like, well, I think a lot of people get used to watching crime investigation shows and they think the crimes are solved in less than an hour, which is not how the real world works. So we always say that, especially drug tips, and we get a lot of drug tips, you have to give that some time, let the investigator do their job and follow up with a bit of a gap in time there. So once the investigator takes that information, again, you notice I haven't said evidence because a Crime Stoppers tip is not evidence, it is information. Once the investigator gets that information, they conduct their investigation and determine whether or not the information is helpful and if there is evidence to support it. And that's when they're able to obtain a warrant. I do know of instances where people have said, well, I got a tip and I tried to get a warrant and it didn't work. And it's like, but did you do any investigating? Well, no, I just took the tip. There's nothing there. There's not enough. So we always say that you have to do the work, you have to do the investigation. And to be honest, and Scott, I know you'll agree with me here, not every tip's a gem. We get some that are not helpful, or some that where information is already known by the investigators. So to make sure that the investigators doing their job will ensure that the investigation is sound. We don't pretend that every tip is going to be a winner. We do want to make sure that we forward every tip to investigators, because it's not our place as Crime Stoppers to hold back that information. So once the investigation is complete, let's say it was successful, the information led to an arrest. The disposition comes back from the investigator indicating how helpful that information was. And we have a matrix that will allow us to indicate how much of a reward the tipster would qualify for. So it depends on the severity of the crime, the amount of drugs, property, cash, whatever that is recovered as a result of the investigation. So there's a number of factors that go into the reward component. And then it comes back, the recommendation comes back to the local Crime Stoppers Board of Directors for a reward range, and they are the ones that get the final say. Now, I'll just do a little sidebar here to the point about Toronto. I believe they transitioned in January of 2020. Their position was that they felt that there wasn't enough uptake of tipster rewards, that people weren't as concerned about getting their cash reward for doing the right thing. And they started with a 1-year test to see if going without cash rewards would be helpful. And I was advised that they actually saw an increase in tips and tip volume to their program. So it does sort of restore your faith in humanity, that people will do the right thing for the right reasons, that it's not always about money. That being said, we do know that Crime Stoppers was founded under the premise of a cash reward. So, for example, in Guelph-Wellington, we always offer a cash reward. We do have enough people picking up their rewards that we won't be straying from that anytime soon. But if there was going to be a program to sort of test drive that model, I'm glad it was Toronto, because they're a large enough program. They have the volume of tips to fairly gauge the community's response to this, and it seems to be doing well for them. So, I don't see a lot of Crime Stoppers programs going in that direction. I know a couple have talked about it, but as long as that there's interest from the community in picking up those rewards, most programs will continue to offer that. So, and then as far as picking up the rewards, once the tipster has reached out to Crime Stoppers to see if their information does result in a reward, then they're given specific instructions on how and where to pick up their cash reward. I know in Guelph-Wellington, we have a great system. It's the reward program is done in a safe public setting. And if you live in the Guelph-Wellington area, you've probably been in the vicinity of someone picking up a cash reward and not known it at the time. It's different for every tipster who is picking up their reward, and it's something that works very well for us. So I'm really glad that we have that structure for our program, because, like I said, I don't see us stepping away from cash rewards anytime soon.
And the money that's fundraised, because I know like vast majority of programs are registered charities at the local level, and they're fundraising. The money raised is going to pay the rewards. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So again, as a charitable organization, we're not meant to be a money making organization. We're meant to keep a fairly lean spreadsheet. And with the demands on a program such as Guelph-Wellington, with the rewards that we pay out, we're constantly fundraising to make sure we have funds to honor that obligation. So yes, fundraising is a key component for most Crime Stoppers programs.
I think my understanding of Toronto, without doing the rewards, they're still doing the fundraising, but they're investing kind of in kind of community trust programs and things like that. Like they're contributing to the building of local parks and things like that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's my understanding, because they did want to continue with fundraising, which again, fundraising isn't just about raising money. That's obviously the goal, but it's also about putting the name out there. There's always conversations about what Crime Stoppers does. There could be conversations around volunteerism. So fundraising does more than simply generate revenue or funds to operate the program. But with Toronto, their objective was, we still want to fundraise. We still have the ability to do good in the community, even if it's not handing funds over to individual tipsters. And my understanding is that they've done a tremendous job of shedding a light on organizations that otherwise would not be known in the community, and helping those smaller, more grassroots entities that could use that little boost, a little influx of cash to help them have real tangible outcomes in their communities. So I understand that it's been very successful at that front.
And donors are, they're getting a tax receipt, I take it, because it's a registered charity?
When you donate to Crime Stoppers, yes, you qualify for a tax receipt. Anything here in Guelph-Wellington, anything over $10 will get you a tax receipt.
Well, that's great. How do people donate?
Again, you can support a local event. Check out your local Crime Stoppers, follow them on social media, go to their website, see what's coming up if you want to support a specific initiative. You can also, on most websites, just do a straight donation. I know on the Crime Stoppers Guelph-Wellington website, we have a donate here button, which takes you through to a PayPal setup. A great, handy, online, quick digital way to support the program.
Well, thanks for that, Sarah. You've done an excellent job of explaining everything.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, this is an important conversation to have, because I know, Crime Stoppers is very common for Joe Public. You see it everywhere. But in this last 10, 15 minutes, I've learned a ton of stuff that I had no idea about. So,
okay, good.
Yeah, definitely. So switching gears a little bit, we do kind of a fun segment, or it's meant to be fun, where we like to ask our guests for their 3 wishes for change. Now, that can be a professional capacity, that can be life in general, whatever you like. So, Sarah, I'll hit you with that question. What are your 3 wishes for change?
Can't say 3 more wishes.
No. Okay. Rule number 1.
Well, first of all, from the Crime Stoppers perspective, the first thing I would love to see happen is to have Crime Stoppers training brought back into the Ontario Police College. I know once upon a time, Crime Stoppers was a key component of, new recruit training. And I think that's something that would really benefit, obviously, not just Crime Stoppers, but I think our new investigators, young people coming into the profession, to understand that here is another tool in the tool belt. There's so much that's expected of our police members, and I feel that there's a lost opportunity by not having a more comprehensive training of Crime Stoppers at that introductory level. Next, I would say if I could wish for more volunteers. It's a challenging time, and I know a lot of programs went into the pandemic at various levels. Guelph-Wellington was fairly strong. We were fortunate. But there were a lot of people that cut back on their volunteer commitments, and that has really been to the detriment of Crime Stoppers organizations across Ontario. So if I could wish for my second wish, it would be that we had more people looking into volunteering with their local Crime Stoppers programs, and a couple hours a month is something that could really make a difference in community safety in your community. And then as far as my third wish, and this is something that, you've been very complimentary here, and I very much appreciate that about the work being done in Guelph-Wellington, but we have tremendous support at our detachment level and through our police services board. So if I could have my third wish be that all Crime Stoppers programs have the same level of support we have here in Guelph-Wellington, because the difference it makes, we're a small program by population, and we have 2 full-time individuals. My colleague is the primary for tip taking, and my job is to be out in the community and communications and crime prevention, crime awareness. So, while it's very lovely, awards are great and certainly very flattering, we are able to do these extra things that seem to attract this attention, these awards, this awareness, because we have 2 full-time people. There are a lot of programs out there that have 1 person or 1 part-time person. We have members in some Crime Stoppers organizations that are multi-hatting with 5 or 6 very weighty portfolios, and there's no way that they could possibly do the things that we're trying to do here in Guelph-Wellington with only 20 minutes a day devoted to Crime Stoppers. So hopefully, I know there's certainly support from the commissioner's office, from GHQ. There's obviously that level of support. It would be great if there was the opportunity to see it at the grassroots level as well.
So how does that work, Sarah? Is there like a memorandum of understanding? Because I take it, because you are one of our members here at the OPPA, so you're an OPP employee, yet you're in a Crime Stoppers program. Is there like a memorandum of understanding? Is it like a donation by the OPP to Crime Stoppers? Or how's that all work?
Right. So in Wellington County, we have a county contract. So the county is in partnership with the OPP to say they will handle policing for this area. And one of the components of that are enhancements to the contract. So once upon a time here in Wellington, we had a mounted unit. Of course, there's the canine unit. And then there's the Crime Stoppers coordinator position. So I like to tell people I'm an enhancement, something I should put on the resume there. But the idea is that it's out and beyond the contractual agreement for policing in Wellington County. And the request for that role came from the Police Services Board. So that is the agreement. And you're right, it is an MOU to have that in place in addition to, again, the standard policing contract.
Well, it works. I couldn't agree with you more. People that are tasked to work off the side of their desk on Crime Stoppers, it's a recipe for disaster, because some of these tips are, you need to get on them quick.
Yeah.
You need to be able to get them to the officers. I know another thing with that training you're saying about the police officers. Like, if you're a cop out there, you're talking with a 30-year cop here. Don't go and try and identify the tipster. Like, yes. Cops are always looking for witnesses. Like, don't do that. It's not what it's about. It's about keeping the anonymity. If you want a witness, you go out and appeal for a witness. But cops are notorious for trying to track down witnesses, and just don't do that. It does not help the integrity of the program in any way, shape, or form. So,
absolutely, couldn't say that better. And to your point about the off the side of the desk, I've had conversations with coordinators who this actually significantly impacts their mental health. As a coordinator, we always have that pressure of, none of us wants to be behind the wheel when something goes wrong, whether there's something comes up in court, you don't want to ever have to hear that there's a disclosure, an issue with your tip, the safety of an individual who's provided a tip to your organization. There is a lot of stress in the job, especially from the tip-taking perspective. So, to have conversations with coordinators that have said, I'm actually thinking about retiring because I can't do all of this. It's heartbreaking because, again, it's lovely to say Guelph-Wellington is doing well, but I think what we do is we show that this is a model that works. Yeah. And if we could replicate this, there's no reason why Crime Stoppers across the province, like every program, would be enjoying the same success that Guelph-Wellington is. I don't think we're special as far as what we're doing. I just think the support has been outstanding, and that's what's made the difference.
I can tell you, when you have a program that's working, it works. When I was in Toronto Crime Stoppers, we changed up an approach about how we were doing things, and we had less staff than we did before, and our tips went from 300 a month to 1,000 a month. And a lot of those tips were preventive in nature as well. Like, there's a gun in a school locker.
Yep.
So you don't want to be working off the side of your desk when you're the person receiving that tip.
Absolutely.
You want to be able to get that right to the officers who can get right to the school administration and deal with that before there's a major catastrophe happening. So,
absolutely.
Totally support you, and we're fortunate that you're a member of the OPP Association as well, Sarah. Carry on. I'm interrupting you.
No, that's Yeah, those are my 3 wishes. And like I say, I would take any one of them or all 3. I'll be greedy.
Well, do you have any last words there, Sarah, before we sign off? You've done a very comprehensive job on what we set out to do here today.
Oh, I appreciate that. I guess one thing I could say is that if we have any active members, uniform for sure, or civilian, if you're looking at retiring, if you're considering leaving the job, that you maybe look into the volunteering piece I mentioned previously. I think the background being in OPP, certainly OPPA, gives you a different perspective that a local program would really benefit from. And if you're an active member, as you mentioned, Scott, if you are worried about getting a Crime Stoppers tip, or you think you could be getting a Crime Stoppers tip, ask your supervisor about getting Crime Stoppers training, or having that conversation with your local program to make sure that you're doing your best practices. And don't forget about the program. Like, use it to assist you in investigations. Make sure you're tapping into it for social media or like I say, crime prevention. There really are so many possibilities with the local Crime Stoppers organizations that we could be tapping into more regularly. But I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you both today, and I've had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it. You have been listening to the program coordinator for Guelph-Wellington Crime Stoppers, Sarah Bowers-Peter, and she's been joining us discussing the origins and workings of Indigenous Focus Crime Stoppers here on 10.5, the official podcast of the OPP Association. A new episode drops every other Friday on all major podcasting platforms. Please hit the subscribe button where you listen to your podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions, or you might have an idea for a future podcast, please email us at communications@oppa.ca. For Scott Mills and myself, thank you for listening, and until next time, stay safe.